Greetings, it is I, Tantas Naravan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to get back into our discussion of anime series from the spring 2016 season, though summer 2016 is starting right now, but I still want to finish up with a few from this season, this previous season, and then talking about using them in your BESM games. So I'm going to go over 3 more today: Onigiri, Bakuon, and Concrete Revolutio. Let's start with Concrete Revolutio. Now this takes place in an alternate world with an alternate history that sort of split around World War II with the bombing, which they go into that, what happened during that time. It worked differently, the bombing of Japan during that time, but this is a world of superhumans. And the superhumans are people with superpowers, supernatural creatures, aliens, robots, time travelers, anything that has unusual abilities. And when we start the series, we start in this one time period where no one knows about it, where it's just this cusp of people sort of learning things. And the first season, because there's 2 seasons, and I'm really describing the second season what I'm talking about now, but the first season describes Jiro as this main character, and he's a member of the Superhuman Bureau, which is supposed to like look after superhumans in a way, but they're really supposed to keep the public safe from them. So they're supposed to keep superhumans on the right path and eliminate them if they're in trouble. Now in this first season, he's working with them, and they're learning that a lot of their actions are not necessarily the right thing to do. And they keep having these kind of shots of 5 years in the future where Jiro has sort of turned against the Bureau and is more on the superhuman side. And it wasn't until the second season that we really see what's going on there, that there's a sort of rift kind of happens between the 2 groups, between Jiro and then the group he forms from superhumans to sort of be more superhuman rights. And by then people know about superhumans, by the time skip in the second season. And there are some dark forces at play during that time. Anyway, it is a fairly good series. I do rate it a 3. So it is indeed an alternate history anime. So it's taking place in this alternate history world. So it has a lot of hints of like the history is different than our own. They do animes and things and shows with this sort of idea in hand, but I felt that this was an important one to mention. It probably shouldn't have been the first one I mentioned, but it was the one I did. But really, more than that, it is also a superhero and supernatural. Well, what I mean by superhero means there's a lot of people that have strange and unusual abilities, the superhumans, and these just might be just people with these abilities. It could also be like fighting robots, people like time travelers, aliens, all these kind of sort of strange things like this. It has this sort of superhero feel to it a lot of times. But there's also a lot of people that are just trying to get along with their abilities. So there are people that could be sort of heroic, but the world is keeping them down. And then it's also supernatural, because there is also this like level of supernatural creatures that are there that they get into very much more in detail in the second series. But they also get into it a little bit in the first one. That they're the yokai, which are almost like superhumans, but they're not, because they're their own creatures that have always been there. And it's kind of unusual, so it has this both superhero feel and the supernatural feel to the entire series. So next up I want to talk about Bakuon. The Bakuon is a series that takes place at Okanoe Girls High School. And in this high school, you're permitted to drive a motorcycle to school. So our main girl, which is supposed to be like sort of the place of the audience, Sakura, she kind of looks and sees motorcycles and becomes infatuated with them and decides she wants to go to school in them. She joins the motorcycle club, and then she goes on little adventures with the rest of the club. They have, of course, their like senpai, who's much older, but she never removes her helmet, which is kind of unusual. And then they have the one girl, which was looking for new members, and then another girl that joins them, like a rich girl who is always in a sidecar. And the last girl that's like sort of in the group, but she also likes this one type of bike. So you learn a few things about different types of bikes. A lot of times, of course, it's Japanese style bikes. And it does have some very interesting comedic elements, that they're very silly, but they also go on these nice, interesting road trips and check out all these interesting places. So it showcases portions of the country by motorcycle, almost traveling, and they also do things around the school. So this is kind of like a comedy series to a degree. It does have this sort of comedic overtones to it, that there's like lots of silly sort of like things going on. It's like sort of like a mild, like, oh, that's kind of silly and cute kind of things going on that kind of makes you get a smile to your face. That sort of low level of comedy. Now, I would call it also a school life, club life type anime, that it sort of focuses a lot of times on this school/club life. There are a lot of animes that sort of focus around those. It's like almost like a subgenre of the slice of life, but I'm calling it that more on its own genre. And the last one I sort of want to do is like the travel sort of vehicle-based anime. There aren't as many of those, but like something classical would be like Speed Racer would have been like a classic vehicle-based anime, where it focuses a lot around the vehicle. And there are other examples of ones that focus around vehicular traveler and traveling around. So this is one that does have this focus on it. So they have this main place, and they often travel out from there on like adventures that might pick up an entire episode. So last one I want to talk about is Onigiri. Now, Onigiri is this kind of fanciful version of ancient Japan where there's all these creatures of myth and legend. And these ones, the kamikuri, are sort of the worst, and they're causing a lot of death and destruction. And it's sort of like these group of girls are called upon to fight against them. Now, this group of girls, of course, this series is a short series, so it's another one that's very small episodes. So they actually tend to get in more comical situations when dealing with them. So you'll actually see some members of the kamikuri kind of like doing stuff with them and interacting away, and they'll sort of blast them away, almost like classic Team Rocket style from the old Pokemon. And it has some very interesting like moments to it that you could call it would be like character building. And you don't actually have to know a lot about the characters, even though they do. That's one of those things, is they do show you enough about the characters without actually knowing a lot about the characters, that it actually is pretty entertaining. Now, of course, this is a fantasy. They're fighting fantastical creatures. They have fantastical powers of themselves to fight these creatures. It's a historical little bit. It's taking a kind of slice of ancient Japan. Granted, there's a fantasy version of it, but they do things like go visit little shops, visit places that are more historical, and travel around, sort of fighting out. But it really is a comedy, is the big one I want to add in the end here, because they do get into more comedic situations. Of course, they do sort of have sometimes serious situations they're dealing with, but it's always broken apart by these little comedic elements and these little comedic things that are going on with the characters. Even though they're not like hitting you over the head with the comedy, it's more like the comedic actions that they take. So that's it for today. I just wanted to talk about these 3 series. I'm going to have another episode right after this one telling you how to use them in your BESM games. If you have any questions, comments, anything you want to say, anything you think I left out, please leave it in the comments below. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. It's a great way of showing your support for the channel and the Empire. Please subscribe if you already haven't. We're always looking for more members, more citizens. And please share this video if you know anybody that would enjoy it or would learn anything from it. And until the next time, I bid you farewell.